Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah, and today's guest is Sarah Kleiner, my friend and colleague, and we're going to be talking all about how light regulates and affects our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our sleep. So we'll be walking you through different colour or wavelength or frequency of light that appears at different times of the day, things like lux, which is a measure of brightness. And also it's a kind of practical conversation that we walk you through, starting at sunrise, working all the way into how to make the optimal bedroom for sleep. Sarah's recently produced an app called My Circadian, and it contains lots of information on the aspects that we're going to be talking about, such as the UVA rise, how to measure lux in your bedroom. We're also going to be talking about leptin, because this is something Sarah specializes in, and how leptin is our master appetite and metabolism hormone, but it does a huge amount more. Also, of course, food is a zeitgeber or timekeeper as well as light. Not as important, but we're going to touch on certain aspects of circadian eating. I've put links in the description to what we talk about, and the app that I'm referring to is available on Android and Apple, called My Circadian, and for a free trial if you use the code Dr. Sarah. Welcome to the channel, Sarah. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody what you specialize in and what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always fun to chat. I am a certified coach with the National Academy of Sports Medicine in Nutrition. I also, just like you, just got board certified in quantum biology by the American Naturopathic Medical Board. And I've been working with clients for 10 years plus, just one-on-one, and the last 5-6 years more so in the nutrition and lifestyle specifically. And I love talking about circadian biology, quantum biology, and specifically how those things support the metabolism.
Okay, because we chat quite a lot about food and struggles people have with their weight, people struggling with hormones. This would be men and women, low testosterone in men, women's hair falling out, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think for people who are brand new to this channel, could you give an overview of leptin? Because I know this is something you specialize in. And even though there are other really important hormones like insulin, cortisol, melatonin, all controlled by light, I think leptin's the most confusing of all the hormones, but I would say probably the most important.
Yeah, and the thing about leptin is it's been studied because, of course, when it was discovered in 1994, the first thing the scientists and the kind of the pharmaceutical companies wanted to do was try to figure out a way to manipulate it using external forces by making more of it and inserting it. And so it was really like, oh, let's study this. So there's a ton of actual data science and research around leptin, and a lot of information that basically shows it's pretty hard to manipulate externally through pharmaceuticals. And it really is something that has to be controlled for with light, with proper nutrition, with lifestyle. It's more of a lifestyle hormone, but it's a master circadian signaling hormone. And I came to be interested in leptin when I was trying to get pregnant in my early 40s. Because you're her godmother. I have a daughter with severe non-speaking autism, which was kind of my entrance into alternative health and questioning the medical system almost 17 years ago. That's when I said, wait a second, this is all nonsense and I'm being lied to when that whole experience happened. And I had always wanted a second child, but it was just always too difficult. It was like, well, maybe it'll get easier. Maybe it'll get easier. It never did. And then I turned 41 and said, oh, it's time. And so I had already been down the traditional route. I had already tried all the functional medicine supplement protocols, megadosing CoQ10 and NMN and fasting and all the things, really all the things I had tried, genetic testing, trying to manipulate that data. And it was a conversation. I've literally only had one conversation with Dr. Jack Cruz, came on my podcast, and he told me offline that I needed to study leptin and I needed to understand light, and that was going to be the key to fertility. in my 40s. And I took it and I ran with it. That was in 2021, in the summer of 2021. Immediately dove into the world of circadian biology, quantum biology, started studying leptin. Again, that's how I know there's so much science around it, and started implementing these things with light and nutrition to optimize leptin, cold plunging, grounding, sunlight exposure, all of the things that are pretty much free to do, deuterium depletion, and was able to get pregnant without using IVF the January of 2022. And now my son, James, he's just turned 2, and he's a brilliant little solid muscle of a human. But ever since then, I've just really become passionate about helping other people to optimize leptin, because it's really indicated in so many different conditions, from endometriosis to hot flashes in menopause, of course, obesity, of course, weight loss resistance, which is the thing that everyone's concerned about, is how can I lose weight? How can I, get my physique where I want it to be? But it goes so much further beyond that. It goes to the immune system. It goes to heart health. It goes to bone health. I mean, it's really a broad reaching, very important hormone that I think people are starting to understand and look at a little bit more, but really they need to have quantum biology and circadian biology as the cornerstone of how to treat this.
Oh, that's a really good overview, because there's lots of ways in simple terms we can describe leptin. That I sometimes tell people it's an energy accountant that works
Yes.
electromagnetically. So it doesn't read how much body fat you've got, because it can't see that. It reads how much energy you've got on board, which would be, in biophysical terms, charged electrons. And then it feeds this information back to the brain at night. So it's like a CEO telling, an accountant telling a CEO, you can spend this much money tomorrow. And then in very simple terms, the appetite and metabolism will regulate accordingly. For sure, there's a food linkage into leptin, because I think the old view of leptin, people know that too much fructose, as in sugar, will block or blind the leptin receptor. And also eating late at night will stop leptin delivering its message to the brain. It'll disturb insulin. So it's something, as you said, there's been a long research history to leptin. I think people pictorially, you probably saw pictures, the really thin mouse and the really big fat mouse. That was when they'd first discovered the leptin gene. I remember when I was at university, it was all the rage, and nobody's ever been able to make a leptin drug, because,
Nope.
like you said, leptin's under the skin, made by fat, so therefore it receives light. And for people who are new to this channel, who can think, well, how does light do anything in biology? If we think about it as a frequency, that if light lands, say light from the sun, UV light, near infrared, we're going to be talking about this later, lands on the skin, the way in which it's propagated and received by the body, it thinks, oh, I recognize you, UV. I know exactly what to do with you. Thank you. Whereas if something like non-native EMFs, artificial blue light, lands on us, the body's like, it's like a stranger. It's, hey, what are you? I don't like this. This is stressful. Go away. And that manifests in ourselves as sort of stress and inflammation. And a lot of people complain about high cortisol or being stressed or being inflamed, and they don't realize that something as harmless looking as an LED light bulb can actually be contributing to a lot of their problems. So in simple terms, that would just be a conversation our body or biology would have with light. Shall we dive into different colors of light to start with? Because there's something else that you have which is very useful. It's a new app called My Circadian. And when we go through this podcast, we'll be talking about things like sunrise, UVA rise, when to eat after sunrise, UVI we want to talk about, because that's UV index, and lux, of course. So we're not going to make it very complicated. We're just going to give you the important parameters to do with light. So maybe if you want to walk people through how different or the wrong light is going to mess up leptin.
Well, in the morning, it's so important for us, for our metabolism, for our hormones, to get the right light signals. And I think a big problem that we have in society is having to be, kind of chained to our phones. And first thing that people are doing in the morning is looking to check emails and notifications and things to get on with their day. And they don't realize that this is largely disruptive to the hormonal process, because as you mentioned, there are flavors to light, if you could say it that way. Frequencies at daybreak is rich in red and infrared light, which have tremendous benefits to the mitochondria, which is the energy management system of the body. And so those frequencies have benefits. And then at sunrise, that's when blue light comes online and tells the brain, hey, turn on the HPA and HPG axes, begin making the right amount of cortisol, stop making melatonin. Like all of these processes turn online, and there's a specific amount of brightness or lux that's available at sunrise. So it's not too much. It's probably around 1,000, 1,500, depending on your latitude, where you live. The lux at sunrise is a little bit dimmer than the rest of the day. So you're still reaping all the benefits of the red and the infrared, which are still rich in that sunrise window. And then we get to the UVA time window, which is crucial for serotonin, dopamine, beta endorphin, nitric oxide production. We get all this information that, again, turns on metabolism, instructs the thyroid. And so we're getting this like instructions from light. When we're looking at our phone, the brightness of the color temperature of the phone, which is Kelvin, because we've just talked about frequency, which is the red, infrared, UV. Those are frequencies. That's one category. And those are very important to the brain. Lux, it increases as the day goes on. It starts out around 1,000 or so at sunrise, depending on if there's clouds or not, depending on where you are. I've seen lux during sunrise time be, as bright as 10,000, sometimes less, again, depending on cloud cover, time of year. But then UVA comes online, the lux gradually increases, and the lux gets up to about 100,000 in a lot of places in the middle of the day when on a sunny day. Now, Kelvin is color temperature. Most LED bulbs are 5,700, 6,000 Kelvin. That temperature of light is really only available in the middle of the summer in June. So that's another confusing signal to your brain, because your phone, LED lights, all of these things have this temperature, color temperature of noonday, middle of June sun. It's a low lux. You can measure the lux of your phone. It's low. And then there's no infrared, there's no red, there's no UV. So the brain is always picking up this information from outdoor light. That's how we were biologically created, to get this instruction manual to operate our metabolism, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, to help us with sleep-wake cycles. Yet most people are completely getting everything. The brain is like, what is happening? It's 6 a.m. This temperature that I'm looking at here says it's the middle of the day, but the lux is really low. There's no UV. It's just bright blue. And so what's happening with modern life and the metabolism and our hormones is we're creating imbalances, because the brain, based on this information, is giving instructions to the rest of the body, even the gut, the digestive system. And we're utterly confusing our brains. And so before you've even put food into your mouth for the day, if you've just woken up and looked at your phone or turned on all the overhead lights, you've just instructed your brain to make a bunch of cortisol, but you haven't supported it with these other frequencies and the proper amount of brightness for things to operate efficiently. I don't hope that wasn't too much.
Oh, no, that makes sense, because basically the way our body works is it's sort of triangulates. It collects bits of information like temperature in the morning, light, intensity, all sorts of things. And then it makes an educated or non-educated decision. What should I do next? Because with biology, everything's predictive. It has to know what's about to happen so it can get ready. So if you've got the wrong temperature, the wrong light at the wrong time of the day, early in the morning, you're waking up and you're the first thing you've said to your brain, well, brain will think is, I've got no idea what's going on or what time it is.
Danger.
And it's like an airport, that when there's chaos, it's kind of just a disaster. And our bodies, I think our cells run something like 1 million reactions per second, more than we thought. So to have our cells and our biology and our clocks all out of line as soon as we wake up, it's just a recipe for disaster or
Right.
inflammation or stress. And the other
Right.
thing I just wanted to add about sunrise is our clocks drift throughout the day and they need to be put back in line for sunrise. Then the next thing I wanted to bring up is because I think a lot of people have heard that they need to see the sunrise, and it's important that you can get the healing red light on your skin, as you said. And this is really important for building a solar callus so that you can then expose yourself to UV light, which we'll talk about later, and UVB, which is higher energy light. Something that we both know people get hugely confused about is oh, you need to eat 45 to an hour after sunrise. But really what this number actually means is we want to eat before the UVA has arrived. So when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to the UVA rise, things like the weather app in the phone will tell you the time of the sunrise, but then it won't tell you when the UVA rises. So in terms of what I just said about getting signals, the right things all at once, we have to also add food in at breakfast time as well. Otherwise, say if you did everything right with your light and forgot to eat breakfast, we've missed a signal. So what would happen then in the body?
Well, we would make more cortisol. The thing that's important in the morning that I think a lot of people miss the boat on is that mitochondria make pregnenolone, and then that pregnenolone, depending on the perceived amount of safety or stress, is going to be shuttled to the cortisol pathway or the sex steroid hormone pathway or both. And for us to get that correct amount of shuttling to the sex steroid hormone pathway, we have to have a perceived sense of safety. We have to have balanced blood sugar. We don't want to think we're starving. And for this process to kick off and to say, oh my gosh, there's no energy available. Let's pull from the liver. Let's pull and, create this whole issue where pregnenolone's only going to that cortisol pathway and not being divvied off as it should to the sex steroid hormone pathway. This can also impact the thyroid because leptin and thyroid are linked. And then eating, again, most people have a really crappy circadian rhythm because they haven't been going outside for most of their life, especially in the morning. Eating is a Zeitgeber, it's a secondary circadian signal. And so it reinforces sunrise, it reinforces that turning on of the HPA, HPG axes, and that sense of safety in the morning that's so important.
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to, say, if someone was wanting to reset their leptin, what would an ideal breakfast be? Because I just want to add here, we can have two groups of people, low leptin and high leptin. So I need to kind of propose the question to you. So we're saying that the light in the morning sets the clocks, then cold temperature is another secondary zeitgeist, but then we've got food. So just quickly, what kind of breakfast would you suggest just for the low leptin and the high leptin people?
Well, everyone needs a specific, not specific, but a certain amount of protein. That's also going to be based on your body weight, your age. There's specifics that you can look at for how much protein someone really needs. Uh, 30 grams for women usually is pretty adequate. And that's what I recommend. So you've got to have protein because when you look at the literature on leptin and nutrition, it's very clear that protein is the most supportive of leptin signaling. Refined carbohydrates and high sugar foods, very unsupportive of appropriate leptin signaling, has actually been shown to really confuse leptin signaling. Same thing with highly inflammatory fats. Those have also been shown to confuse leptin. And so I think a good breakfast with adequate bioavailable protein, bioavailable meaning your body can recognize it, use it, break it down easily. So we wouldn't be looking at like tofu and beans and nuts and seeds. We'd probably be looking at a nice grass-fed steak or wild-caught salmon, eggs if you like eggs. Some people really don't like eggs, but doing a nice solid protein and then adding some good healthy fats, some grass-fed butter, ghee, animal fats. If you like plant fats and can find good quality ones, coconut oil, olive oil, those are helpful. If you're low leptin, adding a little bit of carbohydrate in there in the form of seasonal produce, because we should understand that food is a form of light and it's information that we're giving our body. So we're taking in the right light information through the eyes, but taking in the correct information through the mouth is also important, because if you're living in the UK and it's the middle of December, the last thing you probably want to be having at breakfast is a big giant mango and some coconut water, because that's your body is going to say, like, what the heck is this? But if you are a low leptin person, then having a little bit of carbohydrate at breakfast is usually okay, but eat your protein and fat first, so you get a nice stable blood sugar reaction from the breakfast.
Okay, that's really helpful. So basically, no toast and jam, no cereal, no seed oils. What other horrible things do people have for breakfast that's a leptin unfriendly? I think people can work it out.
Tropical fruit smoothies.
Oh yes, yes. Raw vegetable smoothies. That's a big no-no for breakfast. But also, I think what you touched on is really important. Everyone's an individual, and we can't, say, oh, this number of 30 is perfect.
Right.
We all come
Perfect
in
for
different
everyone.
shapes and sizes, and some people are men as well. So for a man,
Right.
it would be 50 or 60 grams of protein. And with the food, I don't want this to end up as a food conversation, because we'll be here forever. But I think the take-home message here is to eat fat and protein for breakfast and have breakfast. So now we've talked, and that would get done before the UVA rise, and then we've talked about why the UVA rise is so important for neurotransmitters, because they lead into things like if people don't have enough dopamine and serotonin, it leaves you wide open for sort of binge eating and snacking.
And then there's alpha MSH in UVA light, which is hugely important and helpful for appetite regulation. So if you're not hungry in the morning, really, really start with the light. Because a lot of people will say, I'm nauseous, I can't eat in the morning. I'm like, well, get your light right, get your light right. And then slowly start taking your dinner back a little bit earlier, because likely you're eating too close to bed if you're not hungry in the morning. You're eating too much in the evening if you're not hungry in the morning. Your body's working to digest all the food, and it's still not done when you're waking up the next morning. So you have to work on that evening routine, and you have to work on your morning routine with light, because light is an adaptogen for cortisol. It's an adaptogen for appetite. So if your cortisol is too low or it's too high, sunlight is extremely supportive in helping to regulate it. Same thing with appetite. Too low, too high, that sunlight, especially the UVA, that time window there's specific brain protein called POMC that actually is activated in that morning sunlight that will help you to regulate your appetite.
And also, when we get to the afternoon UVA, we'll talk about that. So now we can pretend that we're, say, somewhere like Georgia or somewhere where UVB is being made, because in the UK in the northern latitudes, I think I said the wrong. We don't have UVB for about 6 months of the year. So that's a whole other podcast, and people can watch my podcast with Jim Stevenson to talk about vitamin D and why supplements are a bad idea. But now, and again, we have listeners in places like Australia and New Zealand, and that's coming into their summer. So we've done that section. So now we've got the window of ultraviolet B and making vitamin D, because the vitamin D that we make ourselves is actually linked into appetite and regulation of body weight, because vitamin D can trap light information, and then there are vitamin D receptors inside the mitochondria. So obviously it's ferrying light from the outside to the mitochondria. So there's something to do with metabolism going on with this as well, because again, our mitochondria is where the food ends up and gets pushed through the electron transport chain as electrons, and then the protons power the ATPase. So what can you say about UVB, UVI, safety, being careful, how much you need? Because this is another huge topic that I get so many questions about. And a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm outside all day, but then they're in the UK with fully clothed, or, they've gone outside all morning, but the UV doesn't come up until about 11:30. So, and then other people go out and burn themselves. So how can we safely use, I think your app, well, I know your app has a vitamin D calculator, so maybe walk us through what people do right and what people do wrong with sun exposure with respect to UVB.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't really understand, because since I have developed the app, I get a lot of messages on the My Circadian app Instagram page of, wait a minute, there's no UVB in my app. It says I can't make vitamin D. What happened? I said, well, you you can only make if you live in a above a certain latitude. I think it's the 35th latitude. If you live above that, I'm on the 33rd. Then UVB is not available. Like, as you said, for 6 months, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on how far north you are. A lot of people don't even understand that. So I'll see people in the wintertime saying, I'm going outside to get my vitamin D. I'm like, no, you're not. It's unavailable, my friend. So just to qualify that, a lot of people have no idea that for certain parts of the year, there is no UVB available depending on where you live. And it has to be strong enough for your body to synthesize vitamin D. And so, and like you said, I really recommend people go watch the video you did with Jim Stevenson Jr. I have one on my channel as well. I'm sure we covered some different things on that conversation. So those are good resources for understanding hormone D and, the implications of supplements. But when it comes to, let's say you're in Australia or New Zealand watching this, you do have UVB right now. So there's a few things I recommend. Number one, obviously nothing that you and I are saying here is medical advice. The app is not medical advice. Really, really trust your own intuition with things as well. And don't override that based on an app or based on a podcast of something you've heard, please. But if you're in a place where there's strong UV coming online, it's going to be summer soon. You really want to make sure you're outside at sunrise and at UVA because you're preconditioning your eyes and your skin with the strong red and infrared that's available at those times. And there's strong red and infrared available in UVB as well, but it's more so available because there's less UV to compete with it in the morning. So you're preconditioning your eyes and your skin. Your body is getting the message to start preparing your skin for that stronger UV light. Now, in the My Circadian app, there is a vitamin D timer. You're going to put in your Fitzpatrick skin type, your body weight, and then the app will pick up your location. So it will estimate the UV index in your area. You'll also put in how much cloud cover there is and how much clothing that you're wearing, because obviously you're going to want to expose your skin to sunlight. If you're wearing clothing, that's going to block the UV. And so again, you'll use the app and it'll have a little timer. It'll tell you 15 minutes per side. It's going to assume you're kind of just like laying out, and then it'll give you a little alert, time to turn over. And then it'll give you another little alert, seek shade or cover up to prevent overexposure. And again, if you're feeling hot and it's like too much after 5 minutes, then listen to that, because a lot of people have blue light toxicity. A lot of people have not been in the sun at all. And so you may have to take time to build up your tolerance to this. But what the app can help you to do is provide an algorithm based on these things: your BMI, your location, the UV index, the amount of cloud cover, the amount of clothing that you're wearing, to help you safely expose yourself to sunlight to synthesize vitamin D.
Excellent. And I think one other important thing to add here, the UVI has to be over a 5, I think, for there to be enough energy, enough photonic energy to make vitamin D. Is that correct? Because it has to.
I don't know. I think it depends on your mitochondrial haplotype. I think it depends on your Fitzpatrick skin type. Because I don't know, you were here last year staying with me this time of year, and my UV index is like only a 4 right now. But I definitely feel like when I'm laying out, I have to stay out there for like, an hour or more at this time to get vitamin D synthesis. But at a 4, I feel like I'm still getting a good amount, and I haven't done a blood test to check and see what my levels are. But I think if you are like, think of someone who's in Scandinavia, their body is going to be able to synthesize more D better than, someone with a Fitzpatrick 5 or 6 that has like really dark skin. So I think those things come into play as well, as far as how well someone can synthesize D. I don't know your thoughts on that, but I think that we have certain biological mechanisms built in that determine our ability to synthesize D as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because people in Finland have extremely pale skin with hardly any
Yes.
melanin to grab, and then
They're
things
like a Fitzpatrick type negative one.
yeah. And then things like deuterium in the starting material means it won't crack as well in the UVB. There's magnesium status. But I actually personally think, very honestly, we don't understand vitamin D at all because,
Mm-mm.
first of all, there are about 25 forms of vitamin D that we make. There's also very likely a non-light dependent kind of vitamin D because someone who I respect a lot, he said, I agree. And then there's the possibility of a UV active vitamin D because not that we're going to go into,
UVA.
yeah, sorry, a UVA, a UVA active vitamin D because
Mhm.
when cells get stressed, like as when we make them cold, they make UV light in very low intensity. So there are all different theories of how and why humans came to exist. But if we want to look at the mammals being underground theory, they would have to have made their own UVA, and vitamin D like does so much in the body. There are probably all sorts of other kinds of vitamin D that we don't know about yet, but we just have to go based on what we know. And what you went through is very good. The next thing is that people focus too much on measuring storage vitamin D because you have to remember that's not the
Exactly.
active form, so you need to measure both. Then just to wrap up this section, and I know this question always comes up, what about Canada, Scandinavia, and the UK? That's something I've done a big dive into of different kinds of vitamin D making lamps, Sperties, Chromas, Megasuns, what else? Kryptons. And
Yeah, I've
if you're
got the
interested,
Krypton here beside my desk.
oh yeah, I've used that Krypton. So it's one of these
You look.
things that, like I just, the reason I brought this up is if people have made loads of storage D in summer, it'll just turn into active D in winter. So they don't need to necessarily use what I just described, and definitely supplements. You need to watch Sarah's video with Jim or mine because he's got 20 years experience. So there are links in the description for these UVB D making lamps, but we'll move swiftly on because I mentioned, and we won't go into it, there's another UVA rise in the afternoon, which your app will tell you. And I
Mhm.
found that that UVA rise is really important for appetite regulation in the evening, because I know a lot of people, they're really good
Snacking.
during the day, and then a snack accident happens in the evening. So shall we talk
Yeah.
about evening eating? Because I think when we were talking about this before, I was saying that the combination of red light from the sun and darkness is a good light recipe for autophagy. And then
Mhm.
there are lots of other reasons why eating in the wrong light is going to be a problem. And
Yeah.
then we can move into how blue light at night is super kryptonite for leptin.
Yeah. And then one thing that I know I mentioned with my talk with Jim is that melatonin binds to the vitamin D receptor. And so we really need to shift our thinking to optimize melatonin production, especially in the winter when there's a lot more darkness and a lot less light, because I think that can preserve some of the storage D that we've made and allow our body to utilize it if we need it for stress, for illness, for all these things that happen during winter time. I think that making our melatonin strong in the winter is very, very important. That's why we really have to tap into darkness. But the UVA in the afternoon is great because, as we mentioned with UVA in the morning, how it can help to regulate appetite. The same benefits are available in the afternoon. And in the My Circadian app, I actually have a ton of free videos. I just had the app updated today, as a matter of fact, so that if you scroll down to the bottom, it'll say free video guides. And if you press that free video guides button, a bunch of videos will pop up that I've already made to explain daybreak, sunrise, UVA in the morning, UVB, UVA in the afternoon. I have a whole video on UVA in the afternoon, and that's all for free within the app. On the free version, you can watch all these free videos that will help you understand this on a deeper level and all the different neuropeptides, neurohormones that are made in these frequencies of light, how they interact with the brain through the eyes and the skin. But as you mentioned, yes, in the afternoon, a lot of people will skip the outdoor time. They start getting tired, they start getting a little lethargic, and then the evening rolls around and they're just have a snack accident. And I think that used to be my downfall. Like I would do great during the day, evening would roll around, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, and there I'm eating something that I really wish I wasn't. And so going outside, getting a little bit of light in the eyes, on the skin, can be hugely helpful to this evening time. And then you've also got UVA will go down, and there's a period around sunset where there's, again, this abundance of red and infrared light, which can help to stabilize blood sugar, support mitochondria, make more mitochondrial water, which serves to also expand exclusion zone water, which is a battery of energy for the body. We always think energy from food, energy from food. Well, energy is 1/3 really supposed to be from food. The other 2/3 is from light and from gathering electrons from the Earth's surface. So most people are only relying on the food, and they're not tapping into these other things like grounding and light exposure to help them with their energy production.
Absolutely. I just want to add one more thing about the food and the environment. And where I want to say that what you put in your mouth still massively matters, that
Mm-hmm.
if people undernourish themselves, they're going to have a horrible leptin and thyroid problem by restricting and over-exercising. And the same if people overeat for whatever reason and develop obesity, there's a correlation between C-reactive protein, leptin resistance, and how many points over a BMI of 30. So I know BMI can be a load of nonsense if you're very muscular, but all I wanted to add here is we have found from a lot of time discussing the food does matter,
Mm-hmm.
but then what I just described, the two extremes. And I think what I wanted to convey, particularly for people who struggle with overeating and binge eating, you can deal with it with a light. And it sounds the
Mm-hmm.
most stupid thing ever, but people I know who've binge eaten or whatever for a very long time,
I
they
did it
start
my whole life,
tried
my whole life.
everything.
Yeah.
And they're either sitting in LEDs or their hair, they've got no idea. And I think it's really important to understand. Sometimes it's not people just think they're a bad person and they've got no willpower and they're useless. Whereas actually, from a physics perspective, and that's why I did my PhD was biophysics, I so much underestimated how much light can influence things. So this is why, in part, I wanted to go in through this light in so much detail, but also to point out we still choose what we put in our mouths before
Mm-hmm.
anybody tries to say otherwise. I want to thank my sponsor, Lightwater Scientific, who helped me deliver free, valuable information to you and also allow me to have great guests on this channel. Lightwater Scientific produce the purest and most deuterium-depleted water in the world. Depleting or lowering your deuterium has numerous health benefits, from better metabolic health, more energy, greater resilience, less brain fog, increased physical performance, enhanced healing, and healthier mitochondria. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, also known as heavy water, because it's bigger and heavier than regular hydrogen. Even though deuterium makes up only 0.02% of hydrogen, it's found everywhere. Deuterium is a burden to your body because it interferes with the intricate chemical reactions that occur by slowing them down. Deuterium is kryptonite to your mitochondria, and we need healthy mitochondria to produce energy. There's over 60 years of scientific research on the negative effects of too much deuterium on health and also the positive benefits of lowering deuterium in the body. Light water, deuterium depleted water, is 100% safe and non-toxic. In fact, it's the closest in structure to the metabolic water that your mitochondria produce. Light water, deuterium depleted water comes in 5 or 10 parts per million glass or plastic bottles. So level up your health by leveling down your deuterium today. The purchase link is in the show notes, and use code Dr. Sarah for a discount off your order.
We do. And I overate and binge ate my entire life until the last 5, 6 years when I started diving into leptin to, of course, optimize my hormones. And the thing I didn't mention is that before I got pregnant, I lost 30 pounds. When I was not trying to lose weight, I was trying to get pregnant. My goal was pregnancy. My goal was not physique. My goal was not weight loss. But I implemented these principles of light and some really simple nutrition principles, eating adequate amount of protein, eating less frequently, so maximum 3 times a day, sometimes 2 times a day, but usually 3 times. And then balancing the other macronutrients, carbs and fat based on seasonality. That helped me to not only optimize my fertility, and of course, I was doing some grounding, I was doing some cold exposure, some deuterium depletion, but the light was the biggest piece, the light and dark cycles. and I lost the 30 pounds. And I can't recall the last time that I had a binge eating episode, to be honest with you. And that's crazy because I tortured myself with food, and food was my whole life. And I did Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and the cabbage soup diet and the Master Clint. I mean, just name it. I had a bookshelf full of diet books when we moved into this home in 2022 that I was like, whoa, why I just was searching and searching and searching for the perfect diet, the perfect plan, when I didn't know all along my lifestyle and my nervous system, because leptin resistance and the nervous system have a very intricate link as well. I have a whole lesson on that in my leptin reset program, but there's an element of nervous system dysregulation with leptin resistance as well. I didn't realize that it wasn't necessarily, the diet didn't have to be complicated. I was overcomplicating the diet portion of things. It's so much more simple. But it was the lifestyle that needed to be addressed. And light can dysregulate your nervous system. The flickering lights from an LED, flicker from your phone, versus full spectrum light outside. The non-native EMF, what that does to the nervous system versus grounding and going outside and syncing with the Schumann resonance. So there are a lot of things that are free and very simple to do that can help you with this nervous system regulation piece, and can really help you if binge eating, overeating, these things are a really big struggle for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And a lot of it, we call it stuck in the base chakra. And I'll just be really honest that what you touched on it just then, that food was your life, whereas my life now revolves around my work, Alexis, like so many things. Like, yes, sure, I've had a few feasts in my time, but and I have had, what do people call it, food noise. But I don't get it anymore because there's so many other things more important. And then I also got massively into sort of spirituality in a sort of scientific way, because that's what I'm like. But a lot of it is, like you said, the thing that really messed me up the most was sitting in blue light all the time. I also worked as a scientist before, but luckily I had to cycle to work, and I was very naughty and used to smoke then, so I'd get outside, which I don't advocate whatsoever. But I think it's something that it's so lots of it's free. And then, as I said in the beginning, the LEDs make horrible light, but also the way in which AC current is converted to DC in the circuitry is done in a horribly messy way. So they make loads of horrible EMFs as well. And people go, oh, but I've just installed LEDs. It's like, what do you want? Your health or some different lights? So, and
it's not an easy conversation for people, because it's asking you to change things that are going to probably take some convenience out of your life, honestly. Getting rid of processed foods, that's massively getting rid of a lot of convenience. Getting rid of our standard light bulbs, inconvenient. Going outside during the day when we have this nice, cozy, warm home, inconvenient. But it's massively helpful for your health. Your mitochondria, literally, like I mentioned earlier, the energy management system of your body rely upon the signals in your environment to run efficiently. We have light receptors on the mitochondria, UV receptors on cytochrome 1, red infrared light receptors on cytochrome 4, which is where we make the water, which is, again, this energy battery of the body. And so if we're depriving our bodies of these crucial signals frequently, all the time, and then providing with this very dysregulating indoor light, non-native EMF, and we expect our body to operate efficiently because we've optimized our diet and we've done all these diet hacks, it's just going to be harder.
Oh, absolutely. Shall we move into the lux in the evening? Because I think you've a lot of people do really well through the day with light or food, and then all of a sudden both go to pot in the evening. So I think the studies, that it's a PLOS paper, I can put it in up for people. That is where 10 lux in the evening, as in before you get ready for bed, that's ideal. And it's been, I think even the University of Manchester have produced a publication, and Harvard also. So it's very well known about this level of light in the evening. So it will be 10 lux, and then we can move into the amount of lux for the bedroom to be completely dark, because we've then gone full circle, because obviously darkness is special and so is light.
Yeah, it's darkness is equally important, especially as we get into winter. There's an increase in metabolic disorders, cancer, uh, you know, these issues with mental health, depression, anxiety, seasonal depression. And I think a lot of it comes to we're disrupting this natural light dark cycle that we're supposed to be following, because we're able to make our life an alien summer. It's not like summer, right? Because the UV red and infrared are missing indoors, but we're able to turn up the heat, have all these bright LEDs on. And so it's like an alien summer indoors. And I know you've talked about this multiple times on your channel and on mine as well, but this sort of light, it raises blood sugar, it raises cortisol, it raises insulin in the absence of food. And so this is going to make you more likely to overeat. Sitting in front of the TV at night will make you more likely to overeat. And we're not perfect. You stayed here with me a couple of times this year, and we had a lot of fun watching some of these documentaries. We have
About
fun.
Mom, and then what was it? Teal Swan.
Teal Swan. Yeah, the Teal Swan
We got really
documentary.
into our cult leader. We watched something about Manson as well. So
Oh yeah, we started watching the Manson one, and then I've been watching it. It's weekly right now. The Kundalini Yoga documentary that's out. I sent it to you. You probably haven't watched it, but um, I'm not going to act like I never watch TV. But
I don't have a TV, but I did watch yours, because
you
also
do when you're here.
yeah, because also I'm frightened of produce in the US, and I'm suspicious of Honey Crisps because they're too delicious. And
Or the
anyway,
Honeycrisp apples.
but then
Yeah.
I used to always want everything from the local shop, and they had muscadines, which I've never seen before. So and I knew they were definitely from Georgia, but also there was the green apple that tasted of
Mm.
apple and wasn't very sweet, because I brought it back, and James
The
yesterday,
Granny Smith apples. Yeah.
and then I thought, oh, this looks like Mike Wazowski. And then I had to watch, I was the one that turned Monsters Inc. on to watch in the day, and James liked it. So, yeah, I don't have a telly, and I haven't for a long time, but I do love it. And yeah, we were a bit naughty. And then there's a few times I didn't have the best of sleep. And it was nothing to do with anybody waking up in the night. I was always awake. That's why I would tell you, Alexis woke at 2, Alexis woke at 4. It's like, I was already awake, and I learnt my lesson, and then I had to just say, right, I'm just going to bed. But
Right.
again, with this, I appreciate that people want to be social, but it screws me so much, and I
Hmm.
will do the multiple waking in the night with anxiety if I
Yeah.
have too much blue light. But like
Oh
anything,
yeah.
we have to have a social life, and if you do it once, whatever. But if you're doing it all the
Yeah.
time,
Every night.
and
Yeah, I
also,
will
doesn't
hugely
blue light have
dysregulate your appetite.
I was just going to say, doesn't blue light dysregulate melanopsin in the evening, and then
Hmm.
the melanopsin then wreaks havoc with leptin, because there's
Hmm.
a sort of pairing between the two.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we are watching TV, we're wearing the blue blockers and like cover. You've got your, as my husband calls it, the Unabomber hoodie.
Oh yeah, I know. I've got a new hoodie now. What do you think? It's my white hoodie.
Oh, I like it. I like oh, that's right. Because you've rebranded. You're not doing the black anymore. You're doing more white now.
Yeah, I am. We're not even going to touch on clothing and colors, because yes, there
Yeah.
is something to black absorbing everything and white
Mhm.
reflecting, but that's a whole
Yes.
other. We'll digress. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So
Yeah. So we cover our skin. You would wear your hoodie and your red blue blockers. I would have red blue blockers, clothing like this, but I would have a blanket covering up as much of my skin as I can, because we've got those melanopsin receptors on the skin. And then the blue blockers, I was like, is it dim enough in here for us to be watching the TV? Because it's a pretty big TV. And so what was really helpful is taking the My Circadian app, and then I put my blue blockers on top of the lens, and I would measure the lux of from my eye level, because that's what you want. Like people will take the meter and just like click it all around and like, oh, it's measuring this. Like, no, what is important is what's coming into your eye, and you want it to be 10 lux and below at bedtime. And so I've taken red lens blue blockers, put them over my phone and use the lux meter in the My Circadian app. And it's usually around 6 or 7 lux to watch TV from the couch. So yeah, try to protect those melanopsin receptors on the skin, cover the eyes, and then you want to cut it off because you still need to go to bed. You still need the wind down. You want to get dopamine, offline, because dopamine can block melatonin production also. And so that's why you got to be careful with like scrolling before bed, even if your phone screen is on red, even if you're wearing red blue blockers, that can disrupt the melatonin process. But yeah, I find that a lot of biohackers talk about no blue light at night, block the blue light. Very important, right? We want to block the blue and green wavelengths. Those have been the ones that have been shown to bring cortisol back online. And we need cortisol and melatonin oppose one another. So if your cortisol's up, you can't have melatonin production. So that's important, but also having enough dimness, as you mentioned in that paper. And I have all those papers. If you go into the My Circadian app, go to the video guides button. Under those videos, also, I have a massive amount of papers linked to support everything I'm saying in those videos, because I always like to, have a scientific backing for what I say, because people need that. I understand. They want to understand why this has been shown in our biology to be helpful and supportive of these things. But I have that in the My Circadian app, a ton of free videos, a ton of studies, papers that you can go weed through, look through yourself. But again, that paper saying 10 lux and below the 3 hours leading up to bedtime is as important as blocking blue and green. They go together. And then your sleeping environment, you want that to be 1 lux and below, ideally. And it is difficult with a phone app, right? I have a regular lux meter here because I'm always
the phone, when I measured it, because where I slept in your house, it is pitch black, literally just by accident, why we just discovered that. But then it looks like 2 lux because it's measuring, the phone's measuring
the phone brightness, because people are like,
yeah,
I'm underneath the blanket and I'm measuring the lux on the app. And I'm like, well, to your sleeping environment, you're just going to have to to say, can I see my hand in front of my face? Yes or no? Okay, well, if I can, it's, or you're going to have to measure with a regular lux meter. I find the lux meter in the app is more helpful for setting up the time before bed, but it's impossible really to get it at 1 lux and below with the phone, because the phone's going to emit some brightness as well. So I find the lux meter within the app helpful for morning time to make sure you're getting enough brightness, because again, on the My Circadian app website and in the app, which is all free version, you'll see studies ranging from 500 lux to 1300 lux with varying time periods, up to 10,000 lux, which I think that was 3 times a week for 30 minutes. All of those having an impact on BMI, appetite, and fat mass essentially going down with that appropriate amount of brightness in that morning window, that appropriate amount of lux. And so it's important. It's helpful to measure that to kind of motivate you to get outside on those cloudy, rainy days. And then also to set up your evening environment so you've got adequate dimness so your body can really wind down and you can support pineal melatonin production at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think a lot of it is people try very hard, but then they didn't understand lux and things are too bright. So they're doing it right, but it's still, the retina is extremely sensitive to photons in the evening, whereas it's not, it's not sensitive in the morning. So you have to get lots of light, and then later it's the opposite. So even as too much,
Red light.
Yeah.
There's a study, if you go on PubMed, and I always encourage people learn how to look up studies while we still can before they've been scrubbed off the internet. And then I have a little database of studies I've downloaded because I'm like, this is going to get scrubbed at some point. But there's a study, if you type in red light and cortisol, I believe, after dark, there's a study that even shows a really bright red light when the eyes are exposed to that creates a cortisol response. So in that, I believe, is due to lux, because when I have measured at eye level, if I'm sitting next to my red light therapy panel, that thing is really bright. That's why I say do red light therapy during the day. I get about a 5,000 lux measurement at eye level sitting next to my panel doing a red light therapy treatment. Of course, the further away you move from it, the less the lux is going to be. But that's another thing that people don't understand. Yeah, you got a nice red light to illuminate your home. You got all these lights on, but what's the lux? How bright is it? And are you being counterproductive by having it be too bright in your home?
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes just measuring it, because I suppose
Mhm.
lux is a function of lumens. So it's like lumens per square meter. So the sun or a bulb will emit lumens, but then the lux is measuring how much, I just say in simple terms, a particular area, as in yourself.
Mhm.
Because it can get very confusing diving into optics. That's why we've tried to keep it simple. But basically,
Mhm.
sometimes you don't need to know the theory, but you need to know how to do the practice, because
Yes.
again, you know, you can spend all day reading scientific studies, but you just have to take action with things. But I could do a whole other podcast about experiments and things I've done. But again, with the lux, it's something you have got something in your hand that you can measure. And
Mhm.
also, again, just to show that we're not making stuff up, there's probably 40 years of studies on circadian biology now,
Oh yeah.
all sorts of things about light at night, artificial night light in the bedroom. Dr. Martin Moreed went over it a lot in our podcasts. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of evidence, but again, it's always, you still have to do it. And
Mhm.
people do try very hard, and I found loads of people have fallen down terribly in the evening because they thought
Mhm.
they could watch their telly with just blue blockers on and LEDs blaring, or people
Mhm.
have a bedroom with tech in it and the lights there, or somebody's got a horrible neighbor that
Ugh.
shines the light through. Like when I slept in a different bedroom in your house, I didn't put up curtains
You slept
properly.
in this room, which I've got these huge windows.
Oh,
I've been
I know
trying.
you've got the blue the thing now. I'm not there, the kind of light blocker, but I slept with it without it, with just I used to
Mhm. I
like
didn't
hang
have
up.
any curtains in here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
The light pollution is terrible around here.
oh, it
It's
is. We
any,
won't go
it's,
into why. Yes.
oh God. And the other question I get asked a lot about Lux and blue light is about the moonlight. And I have a study underneath my Lux video that's in the app also that shows the moon, even at its brightest, fullest, is like zero point 0.1.
Oh,
It's
oh
less.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and it doesn't
tiny.
have enough blue green to disrupt circadian rhythm. It's like it's it's so it's not an issue. The full moon is not going to disrupt circadian rhythm. It's likely the street lights, your neighbor's floodlight, the neighbor's pool light.
Yes. The neighbor's porch light and
Right.
the stupid street lights.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's why I think blackout curtains are sort of really,
Necessary.
but also to measure the lux. So
Hmm. I
I just
sleep with
want
an eye mask on too. I
mine
mean,
just
even
falls off in the night somehow.
oh,
I don't
does
know what
it?
I do in my sleep.
You
Maybe
have
I
to
sleep
find one
next.
that's like fits with your head perfectly. I found one that I like and I just keep on reordering it because I know you need to change it out. So I have like three on reserve because I'm all yeah, like that's what Dr. Martin Moore Eid said when he came on my podcast. If you have like a spouse that's like not compliant or the blackout curtains aren't working well, that a really good eye mask is also sufficient to help protect the brain while you sleep. So I have a double protection.
Oh, great. So just before we wrap up, there's just a few more things I want to point out, because you have a free event coming up. But then I went to a conference in Spain where Dr. Anthony Chaffee was there, and there were lots of wonderful other people, and it was a sort of spiritual event as well. And I just wanted to make a shout out for Phil that people love the retreat so much. We've booked another one for next year, and I have to say it was one of the best retreats I went to. And also with me and my raw meat eating, a lot of people have embraced that. And also I met Dr. Chaffee's wife to be, and just so you know a little bit about him and her, she actually has a hair product brand. So apparently these are the best hair straighteners that she makes now. She
Oh,
had a wonderful pair of hair straighteners and then they got discontinued. So she built them, and that's why my hair's not a humongous mess as it usually is. So I just wanted to say that, because often online you don't know what somebody's like, and then when you meet them in person, most of the time I'm massively disappointed. But Anthony Chaffee and his fiance were just so nice, and I just urge people, if ever Anthony does a conference and you can go to attend, because he just blew me away with his pleasantness. And I
yeah.
did say I'd mention the hair straighteners when I had eventually used them, for because she's called Elle, and that brand's Pure Ella. And I don't have an affiliate or anything. I just wanted to thank them for being so kind. So speaking of events and traveling, the other thing I think your circadian app's really useful for is when people travel into different time zones and have got no idea when the sun's coming up and down.
Hmm.
That would be another useful thing. I'll have to make a whole other video on travel because this has
Yeah.
gone on longer, and we'll be here all day. So I think about the summit, because that's your event, and maybe
Hmm.
if you want to walk people through it and say what it is, and that there's free passes, people can buy
Hmm.
a pass if they want to, but it's, that's got other things attached to it, and who's speaking, because there's a lot or wealth of excellent speakers speaking to teach people more about this, because we've just scratched the surface here with quantum biology.
Yeah, and you're one of the speakers also, and that's happening this Friday, November the 8th through the 14th. So it's free to watch, it's free to register. I'm doing a talk on light and metabolism that is specifically dives into lux, all these different studies of different levels of lux in the morning and the evening, and how that specifically impacts metabolism. You do an excellent talk on deuterium. Carrie has an excellent talk on the nervous system and nature. Like I mentioned about the Schumann resonance, she really breaks this down and even goes into our breathing cycles and how that is tied to the nervous system, nature. Of course, there is, like I just mentioned, there's you. Zaid is someone who just came on. We did a talk about cancer and circadian biology and melatonin. There's a talk with Dr. Laura Conover that we did about grounding, which was really excellent, grounding and longevity and the science-based evidence for grounding. She's authored a ton of papers on grounding in particular and how it relates to health. There's a lot of great speakers. There's a talk with Matteo from Axiom, and we're doing an upgrade package. If you want to have access to the recordings, you'll get that upgrade package, and then you get my 3-day Leptin Kickstart program, which is only available through the bundle upgrade package. It's not available outside of it, but it's a 3-day Leptin Kickstart program. You get Carrie's nervous system and nature program. I know you have like a deuterium food
Oh
guide
yes,
that,
I've
yeah.
updated it now. So it's deuterium sourcing nutritious, seasonal, local, low deuterium food. So I actually need to upload that. Um,
Yeah.
so there's definitely a lot of interesting people, because how many people are there now with the talks? Because again, you've just scratched the surface
I
of
think we
the
have
different speakers.
15 different
Yeah.
people. Yeah, but it's really great information on circadian biology and nutrition. We've got Justine Stanger talking about the mitochondria and phospholipids. That was a really fascinating chat. Dr. Mike Belkowski talking about red light therapy and the mitochondria. And then, of course, we have Kelly Bento's talk about mitochondria, red light therapy, and practical uses. So, yeah, it's just a lot of really great information. Again, it's free to watch, but there's that upgrade package that'll include all those courses. And Dr. Conover, the expert on grounding, in the upgrade package, you can get her grounding course that's worth $50. That's actually a live course that'll take place in December, where every day she's going to be giving you a new lesson about grounding in the winter and how to make that work no matter where you are in the world. If you're somewhere where it's snowing, I often hear that that's really frustrating, being in a really northern place and being unable to ground. She's going to really give you a full course on how to make that work for you no matter where you live. So that's going to be a really huge value add for people if they're wanting to optimize their health this winter.
Oh, that's amazing. I've got Dr. Conover's book, and it is very
Mm.
layperson friendly. Even though she's
Yes.
extremely intelligent, she's very good at making it practical. Because the whole thing all the time I keep saying is that you have to understand why you're doing something, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what level you're at, whether you're a PhD or whether you didn't do any science at school, but doing it and being explained how to do something is really important. And
Yeah.
Dr. Conover is her book's really good. I can't remember what's it called? Is it called The Earthing Prescription? I'm pretty sure it's something like that.
Something like that. I don't know. I've
It's
just,
either the earthing or the grounding prescription, but I have read it. But I do know, and she accommodates stuff to do with your family, to get your kids on board, to do it with you. And yeah, it's worth it just for her, because
Mhm.
I think grounding's massively underestimated. But again, the extent of the goodies that there are outside, because the sun does all sorts of other things. There's all the healing plasma outside. The sun pumps out
Mhm.
coherent scalar waves. But anyway, I think we've
Yeah.
sort of come to the end of what we want to talk about. So all the links to what we've talked about are in the description. So the link to my circadian app, the link for the free or the paid access to the summit, and then a link to Sarah's leptin reset course, which is version 2 now.
Yeah. I've just re-recorded it as of September of this year because I originally came out with it in 2022. And then I talk with people daily. You and I both talk to each other daily. And we keep learning, we keep learning, we keep adding to. And with the leptin reset, there was just so much information that I have just like added to the course because of talking with people and seeing them implement it and wanting them to have the most current updated information. And I mean, it should be $1,000 course with the amount of information that's in there when you compare it to other things that are out there, but I have not changed the price at all because I want it to be accessible. So
Oh
it's,
yeah,
yeah.
we're being completely honest here, because I'm about to release a new practical quantum basics course, and I was yesterday saying, "Oh, Sarah, I've spent months on this. It should be
Yeah.
$500, but I've already told people it's going to be sort of 99, or for the early birds 59." And it's one of these things that and no matter what, we're always learning more things, and
Mm-hmm.
unpacking. The human is very complicated, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more to light, water, and magnetism. We didn't have a chance to touch on sort of mindset here, but
Oh
no
yeah.
matter what, there's always a way to be able to solve a problem, and but you have to start somewhere and you have to do it. So
Yeah.
just before we close up, is there any closing remark you want to say, or your top 3 tips, or your top 3 don't ever do's, and also where can people find you?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, is Sarah Kleiner Wellness, Instagram at Sarah Kleiner Wellness. And I have a newsletter. I write articles, at least one extensive article a week that really dives deeper into science and practical application of all of this stuff. But I think the biggest message I want to leave for people, and really why I created my circadian app, is that I just want people to understand these key times to sync their body up with nature. And you don't have to go through and read all the papers, as you said. You don't have to understand all the literature. It's just a matter of doing it and making it a habit. And the app I created, I wanted to help people to optimize their light environment. And my hope is that they don't necessarily need the app, that they wake up around sunrise. They kind of can tell when UVA is. You can tell when your environment's not optimal. It's there to help set up the guidelines, but just to encourage anybody, if they've listened to this and they're like, what the heck did you guys just talk about? Um, don't worry about understanding everything. It's taken me years to understand this, and I'm still learning stuff every single day. Just know, doing these basics, timing your eyes and skin with the proper light signals, eating food that is local and seasonal to you, getting enough protein, getting sleep, getting darkness, those are going to go a very long way in increasing your energy, your mood, regulating appetite, regulating hormones. And it doesn't have to be ridiculously complicated, and you don't have to understand it all for it to work.
Yeah, exactly. Take action,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. And I'm sure people will reach out to you. And again, the links are in the description to everything we've talked about.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been
Thank
really
you.
fun chat.
Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found it useful and informative. If you want to register for the summit, the links to the free or the paid ticket are in the description. And if you're interested in the app, then use code Dr. Sarah for a free trial. I've also put a link to Sarah's new Leptin Reset course in the description as well. So thank you very much for watching and supporting the channel.